Hi, everyone. So, we're going to continue with satire, and you're going to be looking at a whole bunch of political cartoons. But I want to read you this article. Ideally, you would read it along with me, but I'm going to read it and explain it to you like I would in class so that you know why political cartoons are important, what they are, and then some opinions on them. I'm also posting a TED Talk video on the same topic where a political cartoonist who is now, he wasn't exactly fired. The New York Times decided to stop running political cartoons altogether. And so he lost his job because of a really bad political cartoon that they accidentally published. Okay, and so you'll watch that video. All right, so this article is cartoonists can be an important voice of dissent, but they can also be divisive. So, dissent means to go against the popular opinion. So, cartoonists can be important because they're a voice that goes against the popular opinion, but then they can also be divisive, which means they could also divide or separate people, cause divisions, cause problems between two groups of people. Okay. Rwanda has introduced legislation which criminalizes the public humiliation or insult through gestures, writing, or cartoons of national authorities, public service officials, or foreign state and international organization representatives. This is a clear restriction to the freedom of political and editorial cartoonists. And so that also restricts freedom of speech. Rwanda is a country in Africa. It's known, well, the way I know it is because of the Rwandan genocide, which gets mentioned a little bit later, where one group in Rwanda ended up killing a whole lot of the indigenous people who live in Rwanda. There's a really good, it's a good movie. It's just really upsetting called Hotel Rwanda that I watched. I think I was in middle school. I needed a permission slip to watch it as a part of a club that I was in. But I would suggest it if you want to know the history of that genocide and that time in the country's history. It happened in 1994. Okay. Political cartoons are powerful spaces in which negotiations of power and resistance are expressed. They provide insights into power relations, key social issues, and events. By mocking or ridiculing the excesses and failings of elites, cartoonists can hold leaders accountable. So, what this is saying is that cartoonists can use humor to show that a country is failing or that a leader is failing, and that's why political cartoons are important. While the intent and reception of cartoons can mobilize critiques of leaders and excesses of power, they can also be divisive and regressive. This is particularly true when cartoons fail to consider local history, cultural norms, and cultural or religious differences. Recent years have witnessed many of these controversies. These include the publication of editorial cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad in the Danish newspaper Jyllands-Posten, which eventually led to protests around the world, including violent demonstrations and riots in some Muslim countries. Or the reaction by women's groups to South African cartoonists Sapiro's depictions of former South African President Jacob Zuma preparing to rape the Lady of Justice. They said it was insensitive in a country where rape is a daily occurrence. Okay, so what it's saying is that political cartoons can be really good, but they can also take things too far, and they can take, because political cartoons are going to be offensive to some people no matter what, but then it can also go into being extremely insensitive, like political cartoons about Jacob Zuma raping Lady Justice, or just generally like causing more divisions and problems than calling out behavior. So political cartoons want to call out behavior, but they don't want to create division. So it's a fine line to walk, and it's a hard line for a cartoonist to walk. But then obviously some cartoons cross the line and are just completely offensive. And it's not that people are being too sensitive or being hurt too easily. If someone doesn't take into account what the culture is like that they're critiquing, or religious differences, or local history, then political cartoons can come off as really offensive, and it can be really, really bad, and cause divisions and cause people to turn against each other, which should not be the cartoonist goal for sure. Okay. Rwanda has huge sensitivities when it comes to political cartoons. Prior to the 1994 genocide, when an estimated 800,000 Rwandans were killed in the space of 100 days, a cartoon strip in the Kangura newspaper was seen as a propaganda tool to promote division and hostility. This has meant that in recent years, cartoonists remain cautious of crossing official and unofficial lines when covering political issues. Okay. So, yeah, in this case, there was an issue where a newspaper decided to take some of the issues going on and then they escalated the violence. They made it worse. While all journalists try to balance tensions between free speech and causing division, this is particularly fraught for cartoonists. Their work can challenge us to question ourselves, provoke empathy for others, and often relies on an emotional reaction, one not always intended to elicit laughter to convey their argument. So political cartoons aren't always meant to be funny. Sometimes they're just meant to make you react and make you feel really upset about what's going on. Role of political cartoons. Political and editorial cartoons are a key indicator of the democratic health of a country. They are the canary in the coal mine, providing a public display of opposition and dissent. So with the canary in a coal mine, people used to, in mines, when people were digging for coal and things like that underground, they would bring a canary into the mine with them in a cage. And if canaries and birds in general are very sensitive to oxygen levels. And so if the canary stopped singing and died, the men would know that they needed to get out of there because there wasn't enough oxygen and they were going to die soon if they didn't get out. So that's what canary in the coal mine means. They use a unique art to raise questions and speak a truth to power in ways denied to others. In this role, political cartoonists highlight abuses and excesses of power and hold governments and leaders accountable. Witness, for instance, South African cartoonist Sapiro's many depictions of former President Zuma with a shower faucet attached to his head. These were drawn in the aftermath of Zuma's rape acquittal. During this court case, Zuma admitted he showered after having unprotected sex as a means to prevent the spread of HIV. Okay, so there's a whole lot of problems with that. First of all, showering is not a way to protect yourself from HIV. So that's one of the biggest issue. Like the only thing that could protect you from HIV is a condom. That would protect you. But showering, definitely not. I know you all have had sex ed with Margie, and I've seen her whole sheet on STDs, and so I know you all know that. Okay, I lost my place. Long after the trial, the cartoon continued to act as a constant reminder of the rape case, a motif the cartoonists used to question the legitimacy of Zuma's leadership. Elsewhere, we see heads of state being ridiculed by being compared to animals. U.S. President George W. Bush as an ape, ex-British Prime Minister Tony Blair as a poodle, former Zimbabwean elites as snakes. All these images raise questions about the credibility of powerful office holders. So what political cartoons are meant to do is to show, like, especially when people are depicted as animals, to show, like, okay, look, this animal is control. Look, George W. Bush isn't doing a good job leading. That's usually when animals are shown. Or they can show the different parties, because elephants represent the Republican Party while donkeys represent the Democratic Party. So if you see elephants and donkeys, you know, if it's a U.S. political cartoon, it represents the two parties in our system. Control. Restricting and intimidating political cartoonists is often a key part of broader efforts to curtail press freedoms and free speech. So if you tell someone who's a political cartoonist, we're not taking political cartoons anymore, we don't want political cartoons, we think the work that you do is terrible, stuff like that, usually that's the press showing, like, okay, well, maybe total free speech isn't what we want. Yeah, so if the government is trying to prevent free speech from happening, they might get rid of political cartoons, because usually the political cartoons always or almost always make fun of a leader in some way. The vast majority of them that I've seen make fun of the leaders of countries. As elites seek to maintain control, political cartoonists face threats and intimidation for their work. In recent years, we have seen court cases against cartoonists all over the world, including in Malaysia, South Africa, Turkey, and Serbia. In the U.S., contracts have been terminated amid suspicions of political influence. So in the U.S., basically that means that some political cartoonists aren't allowed to post their cartoons in newspapers or get them out there as much because, or they've been fired because they're afraid that they influence politics in a way that's unhealthy, or that people have told them to make these cartoons to try to make somebody look bad. In the case of Rwanda, the media landscape is marked by restrictions on open press freedoms and various forms of censorship. And censorship is when you're not allowed to say something or do something, and it's suppressed by the government. The government doesn't let you say certain things. So if someone wrote something about Donald Trump and it was something negative about him, maybe the New York Times wouldn't let you publish it. That's what censorship looks like. It is classified by the Freedom in the World Report as not free, alongside countries including Ethiopia, Kazakhstan, and Venezuela. Reporters Without Borders ranks Rwanda as 156 in the world for press freedoms, comparable with the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the Democratic Republic of Congo is a bordering country of Rwanda. But the country's context is important. The memory of the 1994 genocide remains strong and is ingrained in the national psyche. So that means that everyone remembers the Rwandan genocide. It's always on people's minds, sort of this is not a good comparison necessarily because it's not the same thing, but 9/11 is in the U.S. consciousness. Like, everyone's always thinking about it. Like, the way we fly now is so different pre-2001. You never used to have to... You could carry so many things on planes. Like, for a while, my mom couldn't even have her knitting needles on planes and stuff like that. And now you can't have metal ones, but you can have plastic ones on planes. But yeah, the way we fly now is so different than pre-9/11. And so I imagine there's a lot in Rwanda, like, after this genocide happened, after all these people were killed, like, the country just completely changed after that event happened. Prior to and during the genocide, sections of the print and broadcast media were pivotal in promoting and deepening ethnic division and hostility. So that means the media, so the news, the newspapers, they were causing more divisions. They were causing more people to hate each other. And so now Rwanda has put more restrictions on free speech because of what happened with because of the Rwandan genocide. Central to such divisive tactics was the presentation of sections of the population as subhuman, as cockroaches who needed to be exterminated. And that is very common when there are groups of people trying to get rid of another group, to make them appear not human, to make them appear like they're not actually people and they don't actually have feelings. It is therefore understandable that, as the country rebuilds, sensitivities remain around representation of individuals or groups which humiliate or degrade them. So it makes sense why Rwanda does not want political cartoons and doesn't want complete free speech at this point, because what could happen is it could cause groups to turn against each other, or they're afraid that it'll cause groups to turn against each other, like what happened with the Rwandan genocide, and cause a whole lot of people to die. And then also political cartoons could help make people look like they're not human, or make others believe that groups of people are not human. And so that's really important. That they don't want that, because that already happened, and that's part of the reason the genocide was so widespread. Okay, fine line. The critical voice of the political cartoonist can provide a vital safety valve for a society. They can give expression to frustrations, grievances, and opposition. But cartoonists need to remain sensitive to local political and social histories. It's a fine line between balancing the need to protect free speech and these concerns. Political cartoonists need to continue to speak truth to power, but in so doing must ensure they do not cause division and hostility, which may threaten the most fundamental of rights, the right to life. So free speech is important. Every country, what they're saying is everyone should be able to have free speech and be able to say what they want, but political cartoonists and people who do the news, writers, anyone really who creates anything, needs to walk a line, so that you're not creating division and hostility between groups of people, or you're not fueling the fire to make one group of people hate another more. So that's really important, and that's something that all artists, including political cartoonists, need to keep in mind. Okay, so I have some worksheets for you. One is more about the video. This one, I just wanted to give you background knowledge on political cartoons, and I'm going to want you to, I put up a website, and you'll find political cartoons on there, and I want you to analyze them. And yeah, we might work with this a little bit longer. Maybe I'll even make you draw political cartoons. I know some of you are artists. We'll see. That might be a creative project at the end. I might give you some choices. Okay, I hope I see you all with my office hours, and I hope you all have a good day. Okay, bye.